Whether you're fresh off the spaceship in Valley 4 or knee deep into Wuling, today's video's got a breakdown and blueprints to help you craft whatever components you need for the highest tier gear available to you. Welcome to Hooglandia Endfield. Let's go ahead and get to it, shall we? AIC requirements are really straightforward for today's blueprints, especially for the first one. That gearing unit is very appropriately needed. It's going to be spitting out everything from amethyst all the way up to zeronite components for whatever gear we need to get constructed. Let's go ahead and dig into the blueprints. Our first blueprint is not only relatively straightforward, it's actually the same setup for both of our lowest tier gear, the Ferrarium and Amethyst components. They both take Iridium ore put through a refining unit, and then you put either the Amethyst or the Ferrarium through a second refining unit. You pipe it into the gearing unit, and it goes ahead and pops out the components that you need to craft your gear. One small asterisk here is technically this gearing unit is only going to be operating at 50% efficiency, so you could put up 2 more refining units, allowing you to get that up to 100%, but there's a very finite amount of these components that you're going to need. You only need 4 pieces of gear on each of your characters, and realistically, you're probably only going to be building 4 or 5 characters with this lower tier gear before your world level is up and your higher gear is ready to start crafting. So with this, I would recommend just throwing it up, getting as many of these components that you need to set up your main team, and then accept that you're going to tear this down and move on fairly quickly as you move along. As you start crafting purple gear requiring crystal components, the complexity of our factory setup scales up a little bit because we notably need not just 1, but 2 grinding units to get all of this put together. We get to feed all of this from 5 outputs, 2 requiring amethyst ore, 2 iridium, and then 1 sand leaf flower filters into powders for both of our grinding units very cleanly, so we get to share some efficiency there. One comment to note on this is that similar to the design before this one, this is only going to get your gearing unit operating at 50% efficiency, but again, there's a very finite upper limit on how many of these components that you need, so you could occupy 10 outputs in your factory and pipe 2 of all of these into this gearing unit to get it to operate at 100%, but honestly, I'd probably just paste 1 of these, then let it run for the day, and then you'll have more than enough of these that you'll ever need. One thing to call out here is that in addition to the ore that you're mining, this is going to require a constant flow of sand leaf flowers. So you're going to want to make sure you have a self-sustaining plant production set up for that. I'm going to cover that later in the video if you're not familiar with it, and there's a blueprint code for that as well in the video description down below. As we get to zeronite components, if you just looked at Kriston before this, you might have a little bit of taken aback that this layout is much simpler. However, it's deceptively so. You should note here that we have 4 inputs, and 3 of them are putting the iridium powder and sandleaf powder into our grinding unit, very similar to Kriston components below. But this 4th belt here is putting zeronite directly into the gearing unit, which is not something that you just have organically. It's a substance that you're going to have to create. However, just like all of the previous components I talked about, you have a very finite number of how many zeronite components you're going to need. And while that number is a good bit higher because there's a wider range of this gear you're probably going to want to experiment with, and you're going to have more characters built in the long term that want to use it, it still has this very upper ceiling. You're not turning it into things that you're selling at your deployments. And zeronite is a resource that you're going to be using in a lot of different things you're crafting in Wuling. So I don't think you want to build the production of your zeronite into the production line for this. You want this to be self-contained, so you can disconnect the zeronite or let it back up once your inventory is full of Kriston if you're leaving this around permanently. Don't worry though, gamers, I've got you covered on a fairly efficient zeronite blueprint today as well. This is crafted at your Forge of the Sky, which another reason in my opinion why you want to have this compartmentalized as opposed to part of your gear component crafting directly is you're actually hard limited on how many Forges of the Sky you can have at your AICs inside of Wuling currently. The compatibility and setup for this is relatively straightforward. You need 2 carbon inputs for your shredding units, which can output 2 of these per carbon inputted, so you can operate your grinding units at max efficiency with 2 of these, plus 1 shredding unit for your sand leaf flowers, turning those into powder as well. One notable thing here is that this is going to utilize Wooling's water piping feature as well, so you're going to need to have access to one of those water pumps to send that into here, in addition to the carbon that you're going to go ahead and be grinding up and then refining as well. In addition to needing the steady flow of sand leaf here, carbon, if you're not familiar, also comes from a flower as a source. So you're going to need to go ahead and set up 2 infinite loops for turning buck flower into carbon to power your forges of the sky, which we'll cover here next. A compact seed production blueprint like this is an excellent one to have on hand for your account, because there's so many things that need sand leaf or others, like the carbon that we just talked about. This self-contained loop doesn't need any inputs to it because it's going to go ahead and self-sustain, taking 1 flower into 2 seeds to go ahead and feed both of these exit points. For the carbons that you need for your Forge of the Sky as well, you can go ahead and take this protocol stash and move it down and over to the right, and then pipe the second planting unit directly into a shredder, and then put carbon into the protocol stash if you want, making it really efficient to feed both of your inputs for the forge. I've been having an absolute blast figuring all of these blueprints out and trying to optimize the space that they have inside of my bases. One call out is, after you get done constructing anything in any of your bases before you sign off, make sure you double check that AIC report in the menu to make sure that you're not overdrawing any of your resources. They're going to come back to your game later with them at 0 and all of your factories working at half or even quarter production because you're not pulling enough up. If you want to see me build some of these things or just hang out and chat about Arknights and all things gaming, make sure you subscribe to this channel and drop by one of my live streams either here or at twitch.tv/Jeff Hogan, where we're jamming some Arknights Monday through Friday during the week. I appreciate everybody that made all the way through the end of this video. Smash the like button if it was helpful for you. Leave a comment down below letting me know what other blueprints you'd like to see me help optimize in the future. Personally, I'm looking forward to building up all of this yellow gear and mixing and matching it on my Alesh teams and building up secondary teams so we can start trying tons of more gameplay focused content here and not just construction stuff like this. Peace, folks, and thanks for watching at Hoaglandia Endfield.